Hello, everyone. It's Wednesday, it's 1 o'clock, and this is Student Affairs Live. I'm your host, Heather Shea Gasser, broadcasting live from my professional home here at Michigan State University. Today, I am so pleased to welcome a large panel of current master's students, or as we call them on Twitter, SA grads, that's the hashtag, to the show today to talk about their future in student affairs. So before we start the show, I have a couple of brief announcements to make. And I'd like to invite you all to please stay tuned, because at the end of the show, I'm going to be making a major announcement about the new co-host of Student Affairs Live who will be working with me to bring you this broadcast twice a month. Many of you know, if you watch the show regularly, that Student Affairs Live is a part of the Higher Ed Live network. And Higher Ed Live is produced by Stoner, a marketing and communications firm that works with educational institutions on branding, strategy, web design, and more. If you don't watch the show regularly, please tune in. Higher Ed Live produces all of these shows free, available to you, and accessible on our website. And we also have them all uploaded to iTunes so you can download the podcast as well. We invite you to be a part of our broadcast today, so tune in live and share your insights and questions using the Higher Ed Live hashtag on Twitter. And I'd like to give out a shout out to my friend Kelly McCarthy, who is once again helping me run the back channel on Twitter today, so thank you so much, Kelly. You can receive our weekly updates by subscribing to our newsletter, and I think Kelly's getting ready to send out a tweet right now about how you can subscribe to that, and you'll get an email in your inbox and learn about that week's episodes. All right, so today's show would not be possible without the support of my home institution, Michigan State University, as well as our producer, Stoner. All right, so on with the show. So some of you may know that I'm actually going back to school this semester. I started my PhD here in the Hale program at Michigan State University, had my first class last night. And so as I was getting situated back in grad school as a grad student again, I was thinking back to when I started my master's degree, which was not in the 2000s, a little while ago. And I was thinking about my experience as a master's student in the Student Affairs in Higher Ed program, and that was actually at Colorado State University. And I was thinking about what are the current master's students experiencing. I know not all people who work in student affairs go through a master's prep program, but many do. It is a discipline, it is a body of knowledge, and so I thought how best to represent this conversation than to invite a panel of current students. So we're talking multiple perspectives today. We have 8 guests. My faculty friends from around the country at several different campuses sent along their best and brightest grad students, and so we have 8 folks today joining me on the call. So thank you all for being here and taking time out of your very busy schedules as grad students. And again, if you have questions today for our SA grads, please send us a tweet and we will pass that along and hopefully get to your questions today. So alphabetically, here I'm going to quickly introduce your guests, and you all can maybe wave your hand as we go down the row. Paige Davies from Portland State University is joining us. Andrea De Leon from Loyola University Chicago is joining us today. Matt Fenstermacher, I've probably totally demolished that name, sorry Matt. Fenstermacher from Indiana University. Cody Finch from Virginia Tech.
What's up?
Emily Helson from Michigan State University, go green. And
go Why?
Yay! Jarvis McCowan from the University of Iowa.
Hello.
Gabby Porcaro from Virginia Tech University also, and Jasmine Scott also from Indiana University. So welcome to the 8 of you. So as we're going through the show today, I'd like to just start with having each of you tell us a little bit about what your current work assignment is, what your research interests are, and we'll go down the same list. So Paige, do you want to start?
Yeah, I can. My name's Paige Davies, and I'm in the Educational Leadership and Policy program at Portland State University in Oregon. Right now, I have internships in our Student Community Engagement Center in Student Activities and Leadership, and then in the Queer Resource Center. my research interests are mostly focused around trans and genderqueer students in higher education and their experiences and resiliency, and yeah, that's basically it.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being here today, Paige.
Yeah.
Andrea.
Hi everyone, my name is Andrea De Leon, and I'm a second-year master's student in the higher education program at Loyola University Chicago. Here at Loyola, I have a graduate assistantship as an assistant resident director in the Department of Residence Life, and my research interests are in student leadership development and how that's affected by various social identities.
Great. Andrea, thanks for being here too. All right, Matt, you have to give me the proper pronunciation of your name.
Yeah, so it's Matt Fenstermaker. You were pretty close. But yeah, I'm a graduate assistant at Indiana University, where I work in the Office of Scholarships, and I'm also the student leadership development intern within Student Life and Learning. As for my areas of research that I'm interested in the effects of bereavement and the impact they have on student development and retention, as well as student leadership development.
Great. Thanks for being here, Matt. I appreciate it. Cody.
Hi, my name is Cody Finch. I'm a second-year master's student in the Higher Education Administration program here at Virginia Tech. I currently serve as an assistant residential learning coordinator in Housing and Residence Life. I've had the opportunity to work with new student family programs, and really my current interest is focusing on the holistic development of the student athlete.
Great. Thanks for being here.
Thanks.
Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm a first-year Student Affairs Administration Master student here at Michigan State University. My assistantship at the moment, I'm an assistant community director in residence education and housing. And my interests, I'm going to call them at the moment, because they have not developed into research yet, as I'm very new in this master's journey, are international students in all aspects, and particularly the relation between domestic and international students, and also joining the dots between academic and student affairs.
Great. Thank you so much for being here, Emily. I appreciate it. Jarvis.
Hello. My name is Jarvis McCowan, second-year master's student at the University of Iowa. My assistantship is with the College of Medicine's Office of Cultural Affairs and Diversity Initiatives, and I also work with student staff and faculty Black Male Support Group. Research interest at the moment, the well-being of historically less represented students as they transition from high school to post-secondary educational experience.
Great, thanks for being here. Gabby.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Gabby Porcaro, and I am also a second-year master's student at Virginia Tech. Cody and I are actually in the same cohort. My current graduate assistantship, I work in the Student Success Center, so I work with academic recovery programming as well as diversity initiatives and retention efforts here. My personal research interest, and I'm also doing an internship in this semester, is the impact that social identities have on an undergraduate student's academic journey throughout their time in college, and what we can do to create more equitable experiences for students across the lines of difference.
Great. Thanks, Gabby.
Thank you.
All right, last but not least, Jasmine.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jasmine Scott. I'm a second-year master's student in the Higher Education and Student Affairs program at Indiana University. My assistantship is with Residential Programs and Services, and this semester I have an awesome opportunity to actually work with the Office of Admissions as well. Some of my areas of interest include student access and retention, looking at social identities and kind of how that impacts the student experience, as well as leadership development.
All right. So as we talked about, we're going to all kind of manage our airtime during the show so everybody has a chance to answer questions today. But we, again, invite folks to send us their questions via Twitter, and we'll try to get to those as well. But the first thing I'd like to know is, what lessons have each of you learned so far in grad school? And Emily, I know you've been there only a week at MSU, but what lessons have you learned so far that you plan to apply to your work, whether it's going to be in student affairs or beyond? And we're going to go with the same order, because I'm afraid that if I change order. I'm gonna, we may have to go backwards one time, but other than that, I'm gonna stick in the same order. So Paige, do you want to start with that question?
Yes.
You're good, Paige. There you go.
Working? Okay. I'm having like major microphone problems. You're good. Okay. So I think there are so many lessons I could talk about. One of the key ones I think that keeps coming up for me again and again is, and I think that this is pretty broad to student affairs, but the strengths that we have in each other and in our relationships with each other, and the mentors that I have, and then the peers within my program. Our campus is pretty non-traditional. We have an average age, I think it's about 26 is our average age of student. So a lot of my peers in my program have been working in higher ed for a long period of time, or are already entrenched in positions that might usually require a master's degree. And so I've been learning so much from them and their experience, and then also from our students who are from really non-traditional backgrounds. We have a high population of veterans. I used to work in a disability resource center, and just seeing the diversity of students that come through all of these doors is, that's one of my key learning pieces, is how much knowledge we have from them and how much knowledge we have in each other. And just nationwide too, being part of ACPA, and what I've learned from them has really been invaluable.
Great. Thanks, Paige. Yeah. Andrea, tell us a little bit about lessons you've learned so far.
Yeah, similar to what Paige said, I think that there's a lot I could talk about, a lot that I've learned in the last year. But I think one of the things that sticks out right away is the importance of adaptability and a willingness to adapt as things change. I came straight from undergrad at Ohio State right into my program at Loyola. But even in the year that I've been here, I've learned about students at Loyola and how, in some ways, they're very different from how I was as an undergraduate. So I think as we talk about technology and just how the world is changing and how society is influencing higher education and how things work, we need to continue to remember that it's really important to be adaptable and to be willing to kind of go with the flow and go with the change, because I think if we decide that we want to be resistant to change, then we're not going to be helpful to our students. And I think it's something that some days I struggle with, because I want things to be the way they were when I was an undergrad. But recognizing that we're here to serve students, that's why we do what we do, kind of reminds me that it's important to be willing to be okay with the change that's coming.
That's a great point. I think those are really important lessons to learn. Adaptability is kind of the key to success, for sure. Mm-hmm. Matt, tell us what your thoughts are.
So actually, I feel like the biggest lesson I've learned is really similar to Andrea's, in a sense of learning about the different hats that we all have to wear as student affairs professionals. I've learned how quickly the student population can change and all the different challenges that today's students are facing, and that I may just be someone's advisor, but I may also need to at times be their counselor or their career advisor or whatever it may be that they need me to be in that moment. And learning that there's a wide range of skills that I need to learn and continue to work on, and that the learning in this field doesn't ever actually end, because there's always something that we can be doing to improve ourselves and to improve our skills so that we're better able to help students in the future no matter what issue may come up. So just, yeah, I guess this is a lifelong learning process that we're all going through.
Definitely. Cody?
For me, I've really learned a lot during these last 2 years, but the thing that sticks out in my mind is Michael Hines does the last lecture, and the thing that he says is the right question is always tell me your story. And so taking that into the role in which I serve now in housing residence life, and really trying to invest in students and not trying to tell them what I think their story should be, or quote-unquote fix them, but really just try to listen and understand where they are in their story and try to help them be purposeful in their engagement with what they want to do.
That's a great lesson. I love that. Tell your story. That's important. And to listen, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Emily?
Well, in my short time here in the States, because I'm originally from Europe, so Belgium and the UK, I think the lesson I've learned the most is to really understand the institution that you're at, where you will be working at, where you study at, and the norms that come with all of that. Because I think for me, I'm transitioning into grad school, but I'm transitioning into a different culture. And as much as that's also a Western culture, understand that there are differences for everybody in everything. And I think I reflect on that on a daily basis. And I'm sure my instructors will keep me on my feet to keep doing that for the rest of the 2 years as well. So understanding your position and understanding the environment, I think, is really important.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I went actually from undergrad into grad school at the same institution, but I gather from pretty much everybody's background that you didn't do that, right? Did anybody continue grad school at the same institution that they did their undergrad at? No? No? Yeah, so that institutional change thing, I think, is something that everybody faces for sure. But for you, I'm sure coming from Europe to East Lansing, Michigan, sure it's been interesting for sure. Jarvis, tell us what about your thoughts. I'm glad you rejoined us.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah, that's all good.
I was trying to tweet and all that at the same time. It didn't work. One of the lessons I think I will always have is self-care and the ability to say no. One thing I try to work with students that I work with now, just be able to say I'm a student. These are my priorities, and what you're asking me to do now does not align with my priorities. And then the self-care, it's okay to take a day or to take some time for yourself and to just kind of check out. I think you'll benefit and be able to apply yourself more. So those are two critical lessons I try to incorporate in my daily practice.
That's great. It's a marathon, not a sprint, right? Gabby.
So I've narrowed down my learning to 3 C's: congruence, collaboration, and continued learning. Your students that you serve and your colleagues can see right through you if you are not practicing what you preach. So making sure that your espoused values are actually being put to use. We live in a society that's so proud and sometimes too proud to ask for help and rely on the strengths of others. And I think in student affairs, particularly an internship I had last semester, I got to see the truest form of collaboration I have in my whole life. And it just allowed this department to work so beautifully and really serve their students well. And then if I'm devoting my life to be a social justice educator, I also have to know I am never going to know everything. So I'm devoting myself to a life of continued learning.
Good. Those are great. I like the C's. That seems to be a common theme in student affairs. We like lots of models that have C's in them, I think. All right, Jasmine.
I think one of the things I've taken away so far is that we can only really be great educators when we take the time to reflect on who we really are and how we've come into being. And for me, that was looking at my social identities and beginning to dig deep into those positionalities that we have within the higher ed system. Because we're never done learning. There's always something else that we can pull back out of that box and re-examine and reconfigure. That's going to help us connect to a student or connect to a peer in a different way. So being committed to a life of learning and to a life of challenge and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone for your own growth and for the growth of our students.
Great. I love that. I think that's a really important lesson. It's about grad school in a lot of ways. It's about redefining yourself and learning through that process. So this time I'm going to go backwards so Jasmine, we're going to come right back to you and go backwards through the order. But my next question has to do with the issues and concerns that you see or that you've learned about or that you've just experienced in grad school so far that are facing higher ed and student affairs. So what issues and concerns are facing student affairs in higher ed, and how has your experience so far and Emily, I think your breadth of experience before coming to MSU is definitely applicable here too. How has that prepared you to tackle these concerns as a leader? After all, you all are the future leaders of this profession. So what do you know about those concerns, and then how do you plan to apply the leadership skills in future positions? Jasmine, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest concerns we face in student affairs and even within higher education as a larger institution is showing the value of a college degree and being able to stay relevant. There's a lot changing in our field, and unless we're willing to kind of make those changes and keep up with what our students want and need, we're not going to be around for very much longer. And so something we were actually talking about today in class is that those foundational pieces that we do as student affairs professionals, those are going to stay the same. We can still engage students, we can still teach them to be critical thinkers, but how we do that is going to change based on their needs.
Great. All right, Gabby, you're next.
So one of the things that was made very aware to me is, although in many ways we have done great work to better include historically underrepresented groups into higher education, a recent study done by Georgetown School of Public Policy actually showed that along racial and socioeconomic lines, those students at the most prestigious institutions are actually still significantly underrepresented in comparison to their majority counterparts, such as white students or upper class, upper socioeconomic status students. So I think as student affairs and as the larger institution of higher education, we still have a lot of work that we need to do. And something that my graduate program has showed me is that as long as there's good support for diversity initiatives, although it's always going to be an uphill struggle and an uphill battle, the work and the struggle is such a beautiful one. And it's a necessary one, because if we are truly going to be in the United States, in the land of the free, how can we make that claim if our education system is not equitable, or if we're not striving towards that equity?
Interesting. I'm definitely interested to see what Emily thinks about that as well. Before we get to Emily, let's ask Jarvis what he thinks.
Yeah, it's kind of the follow-up with Gabby, looking at diversity, recruitment, admissions process, multicultural affairs. I think being able to recruit students and to inform students of what a good fit really is, and to be able to present a space and a safe space and brave space for students to come to an institution, any post-secondary education opportunity, and feeling like they're there to succeed, and that they're there, not a number, but they're actual person who's there to be developed holistically. And then for institutions of higher education to know that diversity isn't recruitment, more specifically that institutions must be prepared to work with students, meaning staff, faculty, the student body, the makeup, I think really needs to be, I guess, the makeup of what the general student population that anyone's trying to recruit. So again, it's looking at admissions, diversity, recruitment, affirmative action, and admissions policy. So diversity it's everywhere. It's complex. It's big. I think that's an issue that will always be in higher education.
Yeah, for sure. And the climate on campus impacts whether the students stay, right? So it's not just whether they come here or come to your school, but how we as student affairs professionals impact their experience may impact whether they get their degrees from our institutions or not. So good. Emily, thoughts?
I think for me, one of the biggest issues I have seen coming up over the last 10 years is the pressures that are being thrown at particularly the younger college students, but also if you're an adult returner or a new adult coming to college, what does that mean for you? We obviously have an economic crisis that's still going on, and I'm sure there will always be something going on. We are kind of telling the mixed messages that, come to university, you'll get a job out of it, but can we provide the jobs? There's pressure coming from family, there's pressure coming for those first generation students particularly. So what is it that we can do as student affairs to alleviate those pressures while they are with us, and to say, hey, it's okay, let's work this out together. What is the focus of your growth and development while you're here? And not to cause them panic, because that panic, I think, will result in more stress and more pressure. So I think our role as student affairs is absolutely huge in that, and understand that, including the economy, including policy, all around that, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I work at Michigan State with a living learning community of first-year students, and it's amazing, just to follow up on what you're saying, Emily, how many students come in thinking degree equals job, and how many parents come in thinking my son or daughter leaves with a degree, they're going to have a job. And we need to broaden the perspective about skill sets and not so much vocational focus, although I think that's a really important outcome as well. So, great point. Cody.
So I'm taking law class right now.
Ah, good.
And yeah, awesome. And so I'm really interested in these other constituent groups that are defining what higher education is going to look like for the future. Really specifically the NCAA and the new Bannon versus NCAA ruling that just came out, and that with Title IX and what that's going to look like for our future student athletes. So I'm really interested to see these other, accrediting agencies and different outside constituent groups that are really trying to define what higher education is going to look like in the future.
Yeah, I think that's a critical issue. I think it's facing all types of institutions, and accrediting bodies, but also state legislatures, boards of trustees, all of those somewhat external entities play a huge role. So that's a great point. Matt.
So some of the issues that I've seen, I think, have kind of been said, or different things have emerged what everybody else has already said. But I think one of the biggest issues we need to look at is retention in terms of what our students experience and what may cause them to leave an institution. So as Jarvis mentioned earlier, we worry about our own wellness and juggling our stressors. But making sure that we help our students get through that as well. So while there's, I know we are academic institutions, but there's so much more that students experience and have to deal with during their time here, so whether that's dealing with mental health, physical health, emotional health, or financial well-being. It's making sure that we're able to support them in all aspects of their life, so that way they can come here, they can get their degree, and they can leave learning and understanding how to balance this throughout the rest of their life. Because I know it's really easy to get caught up in just what we're doing in our day-to-day lives, and if the academic side, they want to make sure that students are learning. But again, just going back to that root of making sure that students are paying attention to their wellness and not just trying to get through school, but making sure they're really taking care of themselves in all aspects of their life.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think coupled with that is resilience, right? It's bouncing back if something happens. I'm interested in your research interests around how when students are dealing with bereavement and how do you move past that, or how do you integrate that into your new sense of being, but not let that define you moving forward. So interesting. Andrea.
So I am taking assessment and evaluation in higher education this semester, and I'll be honest, I was kind of like, this will just be one of those classes I have to take, but I'm probably not going to enjoy it maybe as much as some of the other courses. But so far, it has totally blown my mind. I had a reading this week that was due, and it was talking about the quality of learning that happens at institutions of higher education, and it just really challenged me to think about what are we really teaching our students, and when they graduate and when they have a degree, what actually mean? Does it mean that they just sat through classes and big lectures and accumulated credit hours and passed their final test and got this piece of paper? Or does it mean that they learn about self and they learn about society and they learn about how to be engaged citizens with the world? And if they did learn the latter, then how do we know that? How do we assess that? It was a really challenging reading. I wish I could just read it word for word right now for you all, because it, again, totally blew my mind. But I think that's something higher education, in my opinion, has sort of changed to this checklist type of experience, kind of like how high school. People are saying nowadays that a bachelor's degree is something you have to get a job. So I wonder if that's taking away from the value of what higher education actually can do, and I think what higher education actually is meant to do. I think it's more than just let's check off these items and help you get a job. It's more so how can we help you become an engaged citizen with the world. And I think what's ironic is that many institutions have these mission statements that talk about creating leaders for social change and creating these engaged citizens, but are we really doing that? And I don't know, but I would guess that some people probably don't think we are. So I'm curious as to how we're going to learn in future years to assess whether or not we're doing that, and if we aren't, like how we can change to ensure that we are.
Yeah. That's a great point. And I'd love to open that up for a broader question to hear what you all think about that. But first I want to go to Paige and see if she has thoughts about concerns about issues in higher ed and how she's going to tackle those as a leader.
Yeah, so I agree with everything that's been said here. Really just I feel like I'm just going to echo a lot of what people are already saying, but also I want to talk about the research and keeping up with the research and its practical applications. We talk a lot about in my program, I'm sure you all have heard this, and some of you have even mentioned it, the bridging the gap between academic affairs and student affairs, and keeping on top of research that's particularly tied to social justice and equity. Like everyone has said already, our students are really coming in intersectional places, and we need to keep that in mind when we're doing recruiting and when we're talking about retention. And developing programs that really address the interactions of their identities and where they're at developmentally or where they're at with their own personal lives with stuff like about bereavement. I'm also really interested in that. And developing programs that address these strengths and their concerns, keeping up with them, like Jasmine said, based on their needs.
Great. I am curious about what you all think regarding Andrea's question about the purpose of higher ed and in general, are institutions living up to the promise? So I'm just going to open that up for just a second if anybody wants to jump in and do a follow-up or to expand a little bit on what they said or respond. So whoever wants to jump in.
I'll jump in. I think we were actually talking about this today in class, but I think it kind of goes back to the academic mission of the university. So we all have very different ideas of what a student should get out of an education. So some people think it's to have that informed citizenry, and that's kind of what student affairs was founded on. We have some people who think that that credential should lead to a job after college. We have people who really want competencies. So I think when we have those differing ideas of what higher ed should be, it makes it really hard to be consistent across the board and make sure students are getting the same thing out of an education. So until we can figure that out, or until we can agree on what students should be getting out of an education, I think we have a really hard time addressing it from a larger stance.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point.
Something else that I was going to add, I think a lot of times we sell our students that we serve, we sell them so short. So almost all of my future and current colleagues in the chat mentioned something about equity issues in some fashion. I think that we should be doing more work to include them in that conversation and to really challenge them to think critically about what an equity issue in higher education looks like. There are some schools and universities that have incredible programs, whether that's associated, one of the programs that I work with here at Tech is associated with a scholarship, and we put our students through monthly trainings. They have to do monthly reflective blogs just surrounding issues of equity that they see on their campus and around the world, and what are their thoughts surrounding that. And then we really help them develop their own agency and really have that conversation with them. But that's a very small group of students, and considering how large Virginia Tech's campus is, I think we don't give students enough credit across the board, and that if we started thinking about ways on a mass scale to genuinely assess a student's ability to contribute to those types of conversations, we could really test, kind of what Andrea was saying, we could really start testing a university's mission statement and see if it's living up to that idea of creating a socially just leader who's pushing for some type of great change in their community.
Mm-hmm. Oh, great. Other thoughts? Anybody else want to jump in?
I very much echo what Gabby just said. I know I firmly believe in college being a place for growth and development and all of that. I think perhaps particularly in the UK, because that's where my experience is from, I'm not sure whether university is exactly sold like that, if I can even call it like in those terms. For a lot of particularly young students, it's, oh, I'm going to go to university as a rite of passage, or I'm not really sure what I'm going to do, and somebody's told me I need to get a degree to get a better job. It's not always for some of them, particularly before they become a great global citizen, some of them do actually start reflecting on this while they're a student. But I think missions and mission statements and all of that is absolutely huge here in the US, and is something that I would love European institutions to aspire to more, actually. And is one of the reasons why I came here. I wanted to be part of that and find out why that is. So yeah, I think it may be different across the world, but I do believe in that mission of developing to be a great contributor to society and community.
So I'm going to shift gears to our fourth question, which has to do with social media, networking, and I think, you know, just the capability that we have to be on a Google Hangout and on a Wednesday afternoon is testament to the fact that not only is the field of student affairs pretty small, but that we all have the ability to connect. Who's in one grad program, who's in another, faculty from across the world really are only a tweet or a Facebook message away. So I'm curious about how you all view social media, use social media, what role this has played in your professional careers or your grad student experiences in networking and connecting with other people who are in student affairs. So why don't we go back down the list the other direction this time and start with Paige.
I think, you know, just being on this Google Hangout so far and being able to utilize social media in this way to see what my other peers are doing across the country and really hearing a lot of what is reflected back about what we talk about in our program is really relieving, you know, to know like, oh, these are issues that we're all addressing and that we're talking about in classes, and so that's really inspirational, I guess, for a future for me to hear. And also thinking about Twitter and Facebook and the relationships that I've built with other student affairs professionals across the country. I'm on a standing committee for ACPA, and being able to utilize social media through that to learn what they're doing on their campuses and how we can make our standing committee better, or if I have a question about, you know, some program that I'm doing here at Portland State or want to start, I know that there are all these people just a couple clicks away that I can reach out to. And so that's generally how I use it. I think I have a lot more to learn about Twitter and the benefits of using Twitter, but I've definitely enjoyed the Facebook connections and the Facebook groups that I've been part of. So I think that's what I have to say.
Great. Andrea, you want to go next?
Sure. I agree with Paige. I think there's a lot more that I learned about Twitter. I've been on Facebook since high school, so I feel pretty comfortable with that. But something that's really cool, actually, is that this semester I am taking Leadership in Higher Education with Dr. John Dugan, and he has a Twitter engagement project that is literally like an assignment for our course. There's a lot of details involved, but essentially we are required to tweet at least 5 times a week, and there are various ways we have to tweet. One tweet has to be about the readings. One tweet has to be about something that happened in class. We have to respond to our peers. We have to link to resources that are applicable to what we're talking about. So I think I'm going to learn a lot in the next 14, 15 weeks about Twitter and the power of it. So I think it's great that John decided, or realized that, Twitter is something that is impacting our world. If you look at, with all Ferguson and other natural or current events that are happening, Twitter and Facebook, social media blow up when people have things to say. So I think John recognized that and realized that this could be a great way for us to learn how to engage with other people across the country, not just about leadership in higher ed, but about anything. So I'm thankful for the opportunity to learn a lot this semester and how to use Twitter. And I anticipate that it will impact how I use Twitter in the future, both in my personal and professional life.
Yeah, I know John Dugan well, and I've been one of the people who've participated in that seminar in the past, and it's been great. I think one of the things for those of us who are involved is to be able to connect with current master's students, it's an awesome experience. So I'll hopefully be participating in that again. It'll be fun. Matt, tell us a little bit about how you use social media or network in student affairs.
Yeah, well, it's actually interesting because Jasmine and I actually just came from a class today where we've been discussing social media in the realm of student affairs. So we've been processing a lot of questions about the intentionality of it, because we know that social media isn't going anywhere. It's something that's become a part of our lives. It's become a part of our students' lives. So we need to examine, how are we using it, and how do we know it's effective? So we know we use things like Twitter and Facebook, Instagram, but what are they actually doing for our students? How are they actually using it, and is it helping them to build a community? Is it helping them learn? We talked about how some professors will be using it inside their classroom. So they might have students tweet messages like Andrea, and it might be great for students who have trouble speaking up in class. This is another avenue for them to let their voice be heard. In terms of how I use it in my assistantship, I use it every day. I actually help contribute to the social media efforts of my office. I help run our Instagram account. We just newly added Snapchat because we realize that Snapchat is like the next big thing that students are using. So how can we engage students with our office through that? And I also have a Facebook group that I use with my students to communicate information to them on a daily basis. They request volunteers. So it's something that's just become ingrained into my everyday life. Then in our classes here at Indiana, we have a unique opportunity where we have our tagline as 2 campuses, 1 program. Our cohort is actually divided between our main campus here in Bloomington, and then we also have part of our cohort in Indianapolis, which is about 40 minutes north of where we are in Indiana. And we interact with them via live chat, sometimes Google Hangout. We'll work on projects with them. We've also Skyped in with professionals across the country. We talked to Tony Duty at Rutgers about social media even. So it's something, again, we can't avoid it. It's here, but we just really need to learn how to use it effectively and be really intentional about what we're doing.
That is great. I'm going to go through everybody else is going to add, and then we did get a question from Twitter, which is exciting. So our plea earlier to send us your questions is coming through. Cody, tell us about what you do at Virginia Tech and how you use social media to connect.
Cool. Well, one of the things that I do here is it was difficult for me to determine, personally, am I going to use a Twitter? Professionally, am I going to get another Twitter or Facebook? Like, how do I balance that? And then also, how am I able to be civically engaged with others through social media? With social media being such a big part of today's society, how can I myself, but also I encourage and teach students how to be civically engaged on social media at the same time. So I think it's a really big concept that we need to, as student affairs professionals, consider and really dialogue about how we can encourage our students to be a part of that conversation.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I think that this is an ongoing concern, right? And who else is going to do it? Who else is going to have these conversations with students about how to be civically engaged, how to use social media for good versus evil? And I think that's something that student affairs professionals need to have some level of competency in the media and know how to use it in order to have those conversations with students. So whatever they're using, we need to be on there using it too.
Yes, ma'am.
Great point, Cody. Emily.
I'm going to be honest and say if it wasn't for Twitter, I probably wouldn't be here studying in the States.
Wow.
Twitter is a means to be part of a community, whether that's through hashtags like the SA Chat one, the SA Grad one, whether that's at conferences. Even if you follow the back channel, you can interact with people that you've met, haven't met, keep abreast of anything that goes on in higher ed and beyond. And I've been able to network so effectively and extensively, and now I'm still in touch with people that some of them I consider them to be my mentors, some of them are amazing peers. So I highly value it it started perhaps more professionally, but actually it's contributed to my development personally as well. So I think it has so much potential, but like mentioned before as well, we also need to understand what role it plays for our students, which may not be the same for us. So there's a whole educational piece I think that we need to do around that. But yes, I'm a huge fan of any social media if it's done appropriately, I guess.
Good point. Yeah, for me, before I moved to Michigan State last year, I already had a network of people who I knew via social media, mostly on Twitter, who I'd never met face to face, but that we had very real and great relationships that then evolved once we moved, which is awesome. So I'm glad that worked for you too, Emily. That's fantastic. Jarvis, tell us a little bit about your experience.
Yeah, it's really just to echo a lot that's been said. Just to keep up with any contacts that I've met at a conference. Our cohort uses its own Facebook page. I had an internship with SUNY Brockport. We keep up with our fellow interns. But for me, I really use social media to keep up with what's going on in higher education. So following the Inside Higher Ed or following Chronicle, following diverse issues in education on Twitter or Facebook, being able to keep up with recent articles, just to know what's going on in research, following professors on Facebook and Twitter, seeing what their recent article is about. That's the nerd in me. And I think, but I think most importantly, I look at what type of hashtag activism is going on. I know in higher ed, we might say that sometimes our students aren't saying what they're experiencing or they're not voicing their opinion, but in hindsight, they really are. They're just doing it in a way that isn't typical, not from a survey or not from paper. They're going on Twitter, Facebook, on Tumblr, posting pictures like the I2M Iowa campaign, the I2M Harvard campaign. Students like UCLA, the Black Bruins, they're posting videos about their experiences as minority males on UCLA. So I think it's a critical turn point in higher education and technology, but it also raises access issues, being who has access to different technology and smartphones. If we send out surveys to students after an event, and we use maybe an app on a smartphone, but it raises those issues again of access and equity, who has access to a smartphone and whatnot. But, so those are the type of current topics that I tend to utilize social media with.
Great points. Yeah, I think back to the activism piece. I think we consider activism used to be picketing or sit-ins at the administration building, but now how is social media taking the place of that, and whose voices are being heard, who has access? I think those are great questions to raise, Jarvis. Gabby, your experience in social media and using it to network.
So I absolutely echo everything that's been shared, particularly with connecting with professors or professionals that are multiple levels above me, just to kind of understand what they see as the hot topics. But as far as my work with my students, I think it can give them a lot of motivation when you engage with them about kind of what's the public discourse that is on social media. So like Jarvis just referenced, the students out at UCLA posted that powerful spoken word last year. And those numbers are practically mirrored here at Virginia Tech. And a lot of my group of my students that were I teach a college success strategies course. A group of my students that were in that course are also members of one of our NPHC organizations, Alpha Phi Alpha. They hosted an event to just kind of dialogue through that reality here at Virginia Tech. The Vice President of Student Affairs here, Dr. Patty Perillo, caught wind of these students' activism and now meet with them once a month to talk about what are genuine initiatives that we can take to actually fix this dire issue of our quickly dwindling population of African American males here at Virginia Tech. So just allowing them to see that their opinions matter, and then showing them how it can transpire so quickly up to the upper level administrators, and that they can really push for change across it, I think is so wonderful. And then as far as with my colleagues and my peers, I know Cody can probably echo this as well. I'm kind of in my cohort. I'm always playing devil's advocate and trying to remind my colleagues about who we're marginalizing, who we're leaving out of the picture, And a lot of the ways that I do that is through social media and engaging with my cohort by putting up new articles, putting up new findings, consistently engaging with them across those lines, and then referencing that in class. I think social media serves as a beautiful way to remove the blinders that our privilege provides us. All of us sitting here today are privileged in some fashion because we were able to attend not just college, but now graduate work. So I think I use it a lot just to call people into that conversation and recognize that we all have privilege, but we got to understand how to use it to create a better experience for everybody instead of just living in ignorant bliss.
Yeah. Great point. And back to your point about upward level administrators being on social media and having competency and then being able to respond. I mean, I think that's a really critical tool. I saw a similar thing happen last year at Michigan State University where an upper level administrator saw a tweet and then took action as a result of that. So I think we need to continue to work through those channels, and kudos to Patty for being responsive and then visible on Twitter herself. I think that's really critical. Jasmine, your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely echo what everyone here has said about social media, specifically thinking about us networking within the field. There is a really large amount of information that is being shared on social media, whether it's through Facebook groups. There's like countless numbers of like future student affairs grad groups. All of the hashtags we have. We're using Pinterest now. There's so many different platforms for that. So if you're not willing to like actively engage and share that information, at least log on and listen to it, because there will come a point where you do feel that call to do it. And I know for me, thinking about SA Chat happens every week, and I think for the past year, I've scrolled through the tweets, I read them, I would favorite them, retweet them, but it wasn't probably until last week when we were talking about Ferguson, and I noticed that those same professionals who usually tweet didn't have anything to say, that I felt called to step up and then engage in that conversation. So at least listen, and then when you feel ready to do it, go ahead and jump in, but at least put yourself in the environment so you're ready to do that. Part of that also has to deal kind of integrating our professional and our personal identities and how that is presented on social media. So we focus a lot on authenticity, but if we're concerned what one follower is going to think because we tweet about race, or we're concerned about what one follower will think because we tweet about LGBTQ issues, we have some own self-exploration to do. So just thinking about how we can make sure what we're presenting online is the same that we present in person, and that we're able to kind of bring that rawness to what we're doing online.
Thank you. That's great. Yeah, I think it provides a level of leveling the playing field, right? I mean, everybody has a voice, and when you're on SA Chat, no tweet is elevated among any other. So use that voice as often as possible. Speaking of upper-level administrators who are on Twitter, we have a tweet and a question from Dr. Zeb Davenport, who's at IUPUI, who asked the question, what can upper-level administrators do to better assist student affairs grads with their learning and development? So I'll put that out there. Whoever would like to jump in and answer Dr. Davenport's question.
I'll jump in.
All right, Cody.
Patty, Dr. Perillo does a really good job of just being available. She has open office hours, and that has been really useful and utilized by our students, but also by some of the my fellow cohort members. And then also one of our affiliated faculty is a senior associate vice president, and really they've just made themselves available to us, and that's been really helpful. So we don't get to see them or chat with them all the time, but the times that they've made themselves available, it's been a great resource for us to have just to sit and talk about some maybe higher thinking type of issues and stuff that we don't get to see on a daily basis on the ground level. So that's really, whether we are a part of the conversation or if we're just listening, it's been really an educational moment for me to just be a part of that conversation, and been really helpful for them to bring us in to just listen, to be a part of some of those conversations that they're having.
That's great. Just a visible availability. That's critical. Other thoughts? What upper-level administrators can do to support grads?
I think it's really important to teach us how to be administrators. So in all of our grad prep programs, we're learning how to connect with students, how they're developing, how they're growing. But we don't necessarily learn the kind of skills that we need to actually move up into upper administration. So how do we budget? How do we deal with finances? How do we navigate campus politics? And I think those administrators in those roles are the best people to teach us how to do it. So when we get even that little bit of face time, talk to us about those types of things, because those are what's going to enable us to actually create change in any institution that we end up working in.
Yeah, I think the visibility, the politics piece, I think that really resonated with me, Jasmine, when you said that, because that's some of the stuff that they don't teach you in grad school, you know, how to navigate all of those tricky political dynamics between the various constituencies on your campus. So if they can talk openly about some of the struggles that they're facing, I think that's really valuable for sure. Anyone else want to respond to Zeb's question?
I think tagging off of what Jasmine said, creating more practicum or internship experiences, maybe not directly being supervised by them, but somewhere within the office, because that is forcing you to hold us accountable and treat us as professionals, and forcing us to learn all of those things that she just mentioned. If you would like to apply for a grant and you need me to write the budget proposal for it, that's giving me skills that I could use later on as an administrator, and it's helping also to take a little bit of work off your plate. So I think that would be wonderful to see.
Great. Yeah, I think, and they don't always have to be paid. I mean, it would be great if they were, but, you know, just the experience and saying that you had a practicum in the VP's office or have the ability to attend some of their meetings, shadow somebody for a day. I think those would be great experiences for sure. Awesome. Okay, we have just a few minutes left. I think I'm going to skip a question because I want to move on to our final question, which is I want to give each of you, I know, Emily, you have an additional year, but all of the rest of you are going to be graduating in May at the end of this year, and some of you may be continuing on and going to a doctoral program. Some of you may be trying to get a job at ACPA or at NAFTA or at TPE this year. So, and we obviously have at least one upper level administrator who's watching today's broadcast. So give us the 30-second pitch to future employers about why we should hire you. What are the things that you bring to this profession that that you would like to share with student affairs broadly? So let's see. Should we go? In what order? Anybody want to volunteer to go first? Raise your hand.
I can go first.
All right, Jarvis. Great.
No, mine. It's really just I'm an individual that stays true to themselves, and I think that's one of the foundational pieces that I've learned from higher education student affairs. To just always be willing and open to thrive and open to change, adaptability. Just me being able to live the holistic development life, the framework that we always strive for our students. But as an educator myself, I need to be able to self-explore and look at myself and say, hey, I need to step back, let my students, as they are educators as well. I'm not the only educator, but so my pitch is really always self-exploring, always open to change, adaptability. Really genuine to myself and to anyone I work with. That's my 30-second pitch.
Awesome. I'd hire you, Jarvis. Gabby, you volunteered to go next?
Yes.
Awesome.
So as I said earlier on today, I value congruence probably above all else in this field. I genuinely believe so deeply in the importance of true diversity, inclusion, and retention programs. However, I'm very well aware that within the field of student affairs, that can be one of the more marginalized professions even. I know that it's a sector of student affairs where the burnout rate can be high just because you are called to do so much for your students and for your colleagues as well, just with reaching out and being an ally to various groups and willing to be that ally. I'm so fulfilled by that struggle. I know it's, as I said earlier, I know it can be a large one, but such a beautiful one, and you receive the support. And I want to continue learning. I want to continue growing as a social justice educator, and I'm excited to join that struggle, hopefully in May 2015. and I would be more than happy to learn from whomever's willing to have me, really.
Great. Thanks so much, Gabby. Okay, Andrea volunteered to go next.
I'm actually currently in a place where I'm trying to decide if I will be job searching or applying to doc programs. So I'm not really sure yet what that's going to look like come May, but regardless, I think my big point is that I love to learn. I love being in graduate school. I love doing the readings. I love engaging in the discussion in the classroom and outside of the classroom. Talking with students about the things that I'm learning in my classes and how they apply to them has been awesome. So I think just having an energy and an excitement about this field and about what we're talking about in this field and what we're doing in this field, and I don't anticipate that going away anytime soon. So I think I can bring that to both the doc program and professionalism.
Sweet. Good luck with grad school. I am so far enjoying it as of one day. So, okay, Cody, you volunteered to be next.
Sweet. So I am really passionate and energetic, and I enjoy connecting students with their why. And I do that really through student athletics right now with student athletes, but I love to do that with any student. And so really, you can teach me what to do and how to do it, but really the passion and drive that's inside of me is one of the things that I kind of bring to the table, and I would love to work alongside you in whatever capacity that looks like and really connect students what they're doing and what they're learning with their why they are doing what they're doing. So I would love to work with whoever.
Excellent. I would hire all of you. I think you all are incredible. I love the what with your why, though. That's fabulous. Matt, you want to go next?
Sure. Well, first off, someone should hire me because those student loans aren't going to pay for themselves, so I need to do that.
We all need jobs, yes.
But I think what it really boils down to is that I'm incredibly passionate about the work that I do in student affairs. I've always known that I wanted to go into the field of education. I began with my undergrad career going into art education, and I knew that it'd be a way that I would be able to help people. But since entering the field of student affairs, I've learned that it's really so much more than that. It's about having the ability to help elevate students to their full potential. It's about helping them discover their own values and their passions and pulling on their strengths and pulling that all together to help them be the change that they want to see in the world, while at the same time empowering them to do that for others. Along with helping build a community here with the students, faculty, staff, and other university partners who are all a part of this experience. From my own experiences thus far, I've begun to realize my fullest potential through this work and my vision for a world that utilizes education to its fullest potential. So I guess in short, consider hiring me so that we can work together to help elevate and empower students together as a team.
Love it. That was great, Matt. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm so inspired. Paige, I've hired you before, so I know that.
Hire me again. Yeah, I think like everyone here, I've been a really unique combination of experiences, and I think that's really illustrated in my current work and previous work in social justice and equity focused offices, really devoted to community engagement and looking at the root causes of inequity. Like everyone else has said too, I just feel like you need to hire us all, but really passionate about living what I teach and living what I educate and being holistic and really trying to be consistent with who I am through all these different offices and opportunities I've had, and I think that's definitely a strength of mine. I'm also perfecting my banana bread recipe, so office potlucks are bound to happen.
Treats are always a critical function, absolutely. Jasmine.
All right. I think you should hire me because I'm really invested in our students and the work that our field can accomplish if we're willing to put in a little effort. I think that you can teach skills, but you can't teach ambition, and ambition is something that I have and am willing to live out. I think I'm a weird balance of kind of grit and polish, so I'm not afraid to jump in and get my hands dirty, but I'm also going to be able to navigate the politics of whatever we're doing to create some active change. So if you're interested in hiring me, please don't hire me because you want me to work for you. Hire me because you want me to work with you so we can make some change in our world.
Cool. I love that. That's fantastic. All right, Emily, final word.
Well, I still have time to be a sponge, so I'm confident that U.S. Student Affairs is in the great hands of all these people right here. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't have a particular pitch because I do think I will go back to Europe. So for me, what's important for me is I'm someone who constantly questions and challenges the status quo. Not to be annoying, but really to serve the students and to make sure that their voice is heard and their input is at all stages of any process. And I feel confident in doing that. I feel comfortable in doing that. And I hope I can do that at one point with many of you all, because you all sound great to work with. So hire all these people.
Absolutely. We could build the ideal university right here, I think.
Yeah.
Right here, right now.
Right here, right now. I just want to express my gratitude to all of you for being on the show today. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Was it too anxiety-producing? I know giving a pitch about yourself is hard, but you're going to have to do it at some point. So thank you all for being here today and for sharing your stories. I am truly inspired by the next generation of student affairs professionals, and I look forward to working with you as we continue to shape this profession. So now we're about ready to close the show. I want to transition really quickly as I thank all my guests to sharing a big announcement on behalf of Student Affairs Live and on behalf of the Higher Ed Live family. We have a new co-host who's going to be joining the team who will be working with me closely on Student Affairs Live, and I would like to tweet out right now that the new co-host of Student Affairs Live is Tony Duty. Tony Duty comes to us from Rutgers University, where he works as the Director of Student Life, and he has over 20 years of experience in a variety of different backgrounds, but as a trainer, as a consultant, speaker, innovator, and he's one of my good friends. I've had the pleasure of working with him through a couple of different involvement opportunities in ACPA over the past couple of years, so I am absolutely thrilled. So welcome, Tony, to Student Affairs Live. His first show will be 2 weeks from today, where he'll be sitting down with author Ray Junco, talking about the newly released book, just hot off the presses, which is called Engaging Students Through Social Media, Evidence-Based Practices for Student Affairs. So perfect discussion based on some of the things we talked about today, actually. So welcome, Tony, to the show. We're excited. And then in early October, I'll be back. I have a panel of folks who are experts in Title IX and sexual assault policies and regulations on campuses. And so we'll be here talking about this important topic and what student affairs professionals need to know to address Title IX concerns on their campuses. And you can, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, receive reminders about this and upcoming Student Affairs Live shows by subscribing to our newsletter. So once again, thank you to all of you for being on the show today. Thank you for everybody who watched, and we look forward to seeing you on a future episode. Again, my name is Heather Shea Gasser, and I'd just like to say see you all later and make it a great week. Bye.